A foreign language is a language indigenous to another country. It is also a language not spoken in the native country of the person referred to, that is, an English speaker living in Guam can say that Chamorro is a foreign language to him or her. These two characterizations do not exhaust the possible definitions, however, and the label is occasionally applied in ways that are variously misleading or factually inaccurate. Some children learn more than one language from birth or from a very young age. They are bilingual or multilingual. These children can be said to have 2, 3 or more mother tongues. Neither language is foreign to the child, even if one language is a foreign language for the vast majority of people in the child's birth country. For example, a child learning English from his English father and Irish at school in Ireland can speak both English and Irish, but neither is a foreign language to him. This is common in countries such as India, South Africa, or Canada due to these countries having multiple official languages. In general, it is believed that children have advantage to learning a foreign language over adults. However, there are studies which have shown adult students are better at foreign language learning than child students. It is because adults have a superior ability of memorizing vocabulary which surely allows them to build vocabulary faster than children. And their pre-existing knowledge of language, not to mention that children's knowledge of language is not as substantial as adults. As a fact, there is an example of a man named David Bailey who learned French only in 17 days and became fluent enough to have a conversation with native speakers. Foreign language education and ability, see main article, language education. Most schools around the world teach at least one foreign language and most colleges and high schools require foreign language before graduation. By 1998 nearly all pupils in Europe studied at least one foreign language as part of their compulsory education, the only exception being Ireland, where primary and secondary school children learn both Irish and English, but neither is considered a foreign language. On average in Europe, at the start of foreign language teaching, learners have lessons for 3 to 4 hours a week. Compulsory lessons in a foreign language normally start at the end of primary school or the start of secondary school. In Luxembourg, Norway and Malta, however, the first foreign language is studied at age 6, and in Flanders at age 10. In Wales, all children are taught Welsh from the first year of primary school. The Welsh language is also compulsory up to the age of 16, although a formal GCSE qualification is optional. In some countries, learners have lessons taken entirely in a foreign language. For example, more than half of European countries with a minority regional language community use partial immersion to teach both the minority and the state language. This method is also highly used in Canada, where an Anglophone students spend most of their lessons learning the materials in French. In 1995, the European Commission's White Paper on Education and Training emphasized the importance of schoolchildren learning at least 2 foreign languages before upper secondary education. The Lisbon Summit of 2000 defined languages as one of the 5 key skills. Despite the high rate of foreign language teaching in schools, the number of adults claiming to speak a foreign language is generally lower than might be expected. This is particularly true of native English speakers. In 2004 a British survey showed that only 1 in 10 UK workers could speak a foreign language and less than 5% could count to 20 in a second language. In 2001, a European Commission survey found that 65.9% of people in the UK spoke only their native tongue. Since the 1990s, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages has tried to standardize the learning of languages across Europe. Pronunciation instruments for foreign language learning . In recent years, computer-assisted language learning has been integrated into foreign language education and computer programs with varying levels of interactional relationship between computer and the language learner have been developed. Language learning aids such as foreign language writing aid and foreign language reading aid, targeted at the specific language skills of foreign language learners, are also alternative instruments available for foreign language learners. Research into foreign language learning. In 2004, a report by the Michel Thomas Language Centre in the United Kingdom suggested that speaking a second language could increase an average worker's salary by £3,000 a year. or £145,000 in a lifetime. Further results showed that 9 out of 10 British companies thought their businesses could benefit from better language skills. Studies show that a person that is bilingual or multilingual can make a greater salary than a computer programmer or engineer because they can use their abilities in foreign language to obtain success in a wide range of career paths. Also, due to the increase of international population, a multilingual person can easily communicate and translate to prospective viewers. Also in 2004, a study by University College London examined the brains of 105 people who could speak more than one language. The study found that people who learned a second language when younger had denser grey matter than those who learned one later. Grey matter is the part of the brain where information is processed. Other research has shown that early exposure to a second language increases divergent thinking strategies, helping not only in language-related tasks, but also in areas such as math. Children early on have different ways of expressing themselves, such that they better understand there is more than one way to look at a problem and that there is more than one solution. Foreign language versus second language. There are no major differences in different definitions that different writers have provided about foreign language and second language, although not many of them differentiate these two terms. The distinction between acronyms TESL and TEFL shows some attention of different researchers to the concepts of foreign language and second language. Richards and Schmidt provide this information about second language. In a broad sense, any language learned after 3 has learned one's native language is called second language. However, when contrasted with foreign language, the term refers more narrowly to a language that plays a major role in a particular country or region, though it may not be the first language of many people who use it. For example, the learning of English by immigrants in the US or the learning of Catalan by speakers of Spanish in Catalonia are cases of second language learning, because those languages are necessary for survival in those societies. English is also a second language for many people in countries like Nigeria, India, Singapore and the Philippines, because English fulfills many important functions in those countries and learning English is necessary to be successful within that context. They also define a foreign language as a language which is not the native language of large numbers of people in a particular country or region, is not used as a medium of instruction in schools and is not widely used as a medium of communication in government, media, etc. They note that foreign languages are typically taught as school subjects for the purpose of communicating with foreigners or for reading printed materials in the language. Crystal notes that first language is distinguishable from second language, distinguishable in turn from foreign language. He also notes that the distinction between the latter two is not universally recognized. Stern believes that there is today consensus that a necessary distinction is to be made between a non-native language learned and used within one country to which the term second language has been applied and a non-native language learned and used with reference to a speech community outside national or territorial boundaries to which the term foreign language is commonly given. He argues that while the distinction between second and foreign has a certain justification, it is perhaps less important than it has sometimes been made out to be and it may be misleading. He notes that the distinction became popular after World War II in international organizations, such as UNESCO, in order to meet nationalist susceptibilities and discussions on language questions. Persaud and Connor Linton, Falk and Hudson provide similar definitions for the two terms. O'Grady al. don't mention the exact term second and foreign language, but they emphasize on the role of learning environment in teaching non-native languages. So, the distinction between second language and foreign language is a geographical and environmental distinction. We can mention second language situation and foreign language situation as two situations of learning, not two kinds of languages. So a foreign language is not always a foreign language and a second language is not always a second language. Since the distinction is geographical, the two situations can be considered as a continuum. At one extreme, we may find learners learning without external help and direction purely from exposure to the non-native language through living in the target language environment, and at the other we find learners learning the non-native language exclusively in language teaching setting and classrooms. a second language usually has official status or a recognized function within a country which a foreign language has not, and furthermore these two different situations frequently have important consequences to which attention has been drawn in some books. For example, Persian is a second language for Kurdish people, but not vice versa, because there is no Kurdish environment for Persian speakers who are learning Kurdish. On the other hand, English is a foreign language for both groups, because there is no contact between Kurdish and Persian people with English people. However, if an Iranian person goes to USA, then English becomes a second language for him or her. Thus British immigrants to Iran learn Persian as a second language and Persian speakers study English in Britain as a second language. In Kermanshah or Kurdistan, we can speak of learning Kurdish by Persian speakers as a second rather than foreign language. The purposes of second language learning are often different from foreign language learning. Second language is needed for full participation in the political and economic life of the nation, because it is frequently the official language or one of two or more recognized languages. It may be the language needed for education. Among the purposes of foreign language learning are traveling abroad, communication with native speakers, reading foreign literature or scientific and technical works. There are some major differences between foreign and second language teaching and learning. In second language learning, one can receive input for learning both inside and outside the classroom. He or she can readily put to use what is learned, as can the child learning its first language, so lots of naturalistic practice is possible. Second language learners are usually more successful in developing non-native language skills, and what is learned may be essential for getting along in the community, so motivation is stronger. Acculturation, that is a main aspect of learning a language, is easier in the case of second language learning, and the emotional role of language is easier to use for learners. The major characteristics of the planned condition of the classroom in the case of foreign language learning as opposed to natural conditions of second language learning are: psychosocial demands of classroom. The school classroom requires adjustment of the learner to the group processes, classroom discipline and procedures. The learner receives only a limited amount of individual attention. Regular attendance is required. Pre-selected language data. The teacher generally introduces pre-selected target language items. Spontaneity is limited. A planned curriculum is followed with the teacher attempting to realize certain goals regarding the language that is to be learned. Grammatical rules presented. The teacher may describe a rule in the native language to explain a grammatical structure. The teacher is expected to understand, assimilate and later apply the abstract rule. Unreal limited situations. Situations for language use in the classroom are limited in variety and scope as compared to those outside of the classroom. The situations which are employed are often simulated. Educational aids and assignments. In order to assist learning and achieve teacher goals, books, writing or a language lab, for example, may be used. Work assignments may be given to be completed in the class or at home. There are some other issues in teaching and learning foreign language and second language, including the type of motivation and the distinction between learning and acquisition, that I will discuss them in separate parts. There is often a distinction between acquisition and learning in linguistic and pedagogic literature. Children are described as acquiring their native language, where there is no previous information and knowledge in their mind. On the other hand, adults are said to learn a non-native language. Acquisition is viewed as a natural, unconscious, and taught and probably unteachable process, while learning is somewhat artificial, usually conscious and possibly dependent on instruction and study. The distinction between acquisition and learning can be used in this discussion, because the general conditions in the case of second language offer opportunities for acquisition, because it is informal, free, undirected or naturalistic. On the other hand, educational treatment in the case of foreign language may offer opportunities mainly for learning. Nevertheless, acquisition can take place in the case of foreign language learning and learning can take place in the case of second language learning. For example, immigrants to the U.S. can attend language teaching classes in the target language environment. On the other hand, foreign language learners that are far from target language environment can sometimes acquire some points, for example by listening to foreign radio, reading literature etc. See also, first language, foreign language influences in English, Fremdsprachen und Hochschule, international auxiliary language, language education, language exchange, language resource center, language school, learning by teaching, multilingualism, official language, second language, teaching English as a foreign language. Notes and references. Sources: Bailey, David. The Secret to Learning a Foreign Language as an Adult. Time, October 2, 2014. Web. Crystal, D., A Dictionary of Linguistics and Phonetics, 5th edition, London, Blackwell. Falk, J.S., Linguistics and Language, USA, John Wiley & Sons. Fasold, R.W. and Connor Linton J., An Introduction to Language and Linguistics, Cambridge, Cambridge University Press. Hudson, G., Essential Introductory Linguistics, London, Blackwell. Merritt, Anne. Are children really better at foreign language learning? The Telegraph. Telegraph Media Group, September 18, 2013. Web. Richards, J.C. and Schmidt R., Longman Dictionary of Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics, 3rd edition, London, Longman. Service, Elizabeth, A. al. Adults and 8-year-olds learning in a foreign word repetition task, similar and different. Language Learning 64.2 215-246. Communication and Mass Media Complete. Web. Steinberg, D.D., Psycholinguistics, Language, Mind and World, London, Longman. Stern, H.H., Fundamental Concepts of Language Teaching. Oxford, Oxford University Press.